I'm going to come.
Hello, everyone. This is Rolo, the Puerto Rican pistolero, coming to you live from... Here we go. I don't know why that was all zoomed in right there. Coming to you live from beautiful Miami, Florida. I hope everybody is doing wonderful this evening. It is Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Thursday, more than a week has passed since the historic election of re-election, I should say, of Donald J. Trump as our 47th president. And I think things have been extremely spicy. They've been very unexpected. And let me know if you can hear me right now, if we're having any trouble here, because it seems like the microphone was being a little bit strange earlier. So let me know if you can hear me or if we're having some issues on your end. I'm not 100% sure if everything is working correctly right now. We may have to give it a reboot because it seemed like there was some strange feedback going on, and I'm not sure what's causing it this time because all the mics and everything seem to be good right now. So let me know. Oh, yeah, I'm not sure what that feedback is right there. Wow. Okay, let's see. What could be causing this? Let me know. Mic check, mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Let me know if you can hear me out there, ladies and gentlemen. Deceptic, how's it going? So, yes, let me know if you can hear me, if everything is coming through 5 by 5. I cannot tell right now. Go ahead and let me know what may be going on here. I'm trying to figure it out as we speak. Let's see. I cannot tell. Okay, it does look like it's working. So just let me know if I have any issues for some reason. I was getting some weird feedback, but I think it was just the music end of things. So we should be good to go. Again, this is episode 24 of Rolo's Rants. Let's just start off with the coffee. Yeah, that was weird. I'm not sure where that feedback started. It just seems like it was the bad music file there at the end, but it seems like we're good to go. Got to start with the live pour. We have a lot to talk about. I was originally going to go... I've been kind of fluctuating between Wednesdays and Thursdays. I think I'm going to stick with the Thursdays because it seems like that's what you guys like, and that's what I used to do with the... when I used to do 2 gaming streams a week. So we'll stick with that. But we have a lot to talk about today. The spiciness with Trump's appointments have caused the left to go in full meltdown along with the establishment, which is fan-freaking-tastic. So we'll go through some of the latest appointments that we know about. We'll see what I think. Dark Jara just subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much, Dark Jara. I appreciate you for joining. So once again, on Rumble, on Rumble, YouTube, and X, we are live. Let me know if it is good to go over there. I'm not sure what was going on with that music feedback, but we'll have to figure it out. I'm going to have to blow up my entire setup and room later on this week. New flooring is going in, and it's going to be a disaster and a pain in the butt. I'm not looking forward to it, but it'll give me a chance to kind of reorganize and change everything here, even though bought all new cabling, did all that stuff. So hopefully it's not the Rodecaster itself, because this is an expensive piece of equipment and it would be really painful if the Rodecaster went bad. But since you guys can hear me through the mic, I don't think that that's what's causing the issue. It's obviously something else. So we're good to go. So what have we got on the agenda today? We're going to talk about Trump's appointments. Going to talk a little bit about Senate Majority Leader Thune being elected by the House, well, by the Senate GOP, and a little bit of my disappointment with that. But there's good and there's bad. It kind of depends on what you're expecting from the Senate Majority Leader. I know that, a lot of the MAGA people wanted Rick Scott. I think that Mike Lee and Rand Paul would have been the best choices, but they didn't have any shot, and they backed up Rick Scott. The Second Amendment community did not want Rick Scott, and I understand why they didn't either. So it kind of came down to a pick your poison kind of thing. So if you're a single issue Second Amendment voter, maybe John Thune is your choice. If you're a little bit more of an aggregate voter and you like the entire MAGA alliance and coalition that we've picked up here as a whole, you're probably disappointed. So I do think some deals were probably struck. So I'll go through a little bit of that. We'll discuss the picks that we've got so far. Really, I think we're going to focus on the four big ones, which is going to be Rubio as the sauce, the Secretary of State, Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence. Obviously, Matt Gaetz as Attorney General is the one that's been picking up the most fire. So actually, it'll be five of them. Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, and just announced about an hour and a half ago, finally, RFK as Health and Human Services Director. So those will be the big ones. We'll go through that. I also want to spend some time going through something that I've never really talked about on this show before, but I watched the entire UAP/UFO hearing yesterday on the House, in the House of Representatives. I was fascinated by that. I do have a lot of, especially over the last year, I've really gotten into more of the entire, not that I've never been into it, but everything having to do with unidentified anomalous phenomenon, which is UAP. That's the more modern term for unidentified flying objects, because they do more than just fly, and they're not always completely unidentified, or they're not flying. They can do a lot of different things. So we'll go through that. And sometimes they don't seem to be objects. They may be something more or different. So the terminology change, I think, is fascinating in and of itself. I do want to look through Michael Schellenberger's documents. It may be a lot of reading, but I think it's actually worth looking into, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. So I think we'll just get started right there at the top. So I think the last week has been extremely fascinating with what has been going on with Trump's not only picks for his cabinet, the way that he's doing things, the way that his transition team is going, and kind of how he's dropping policy decrees every day or so. You know, these 3-minute videos where he, focuses on one issue, really goes hard at it, states what his expectations are and what he wants out of it, kind of letting Congress know, hey, this is the deal, and going from there. And I think it's great because it really is a new way of doing things. He's speaking directly to the American people, and he's letting them know, hey, these are some of the promises that I made on the campaign trail. This is how I intend to implement it, and this is why I believe in whatever subject this is, whether it's, the transgender issue, and some other things, concealed carry reciprocity, which is fantastic. Trump made some mistakes in the Second Amendment. I think that he's undoing those mistakes this time around. And it's fascinating to see how I really am a believer now more than ever that we can go into destiny and fate into things like that. I do think that there's a purpose for Donald Trump. I do think that there's a spiritual war going on between just an ideological war between the left and the right. There's a forces of good and evil kind of, I would say undertone that is going on here that's beyond anything that we're seeing. So I think that Trump was given a second chance here that will be even more effective than before, because if we think about the cabinet that he had during his first term, he really came in as a political novice. I discussed this a little bit last week. And I think he learned a lot of lessons, and I think that there were some things that he could have handled better in his first term. Mainly, I think COVID, not firing Fauci. I think, his handling of just his cabinet choices were pretty mediocre in retrospect. It's something he would agree with, and he's already discussed a little bit more at length on Joe Rogan's podcast. So this has really given him a chance to undo some of those mistakes, choose a completely different team, and really mature as a candidate. Not that, how can we say that a man that's 80 years old mature? But that's definitely something that we've seen. He's been a bit humbled, and he's made a lot of headway as far as his grasp of what it means to be the president and the type of people that he wants on his team. And I think really the best thing that it did for everybody is the American people at large, the normies, really did not understand what was going on with as far as the deep state and what the left in this country was really planning and what was going on in the rest of the world. And seeing 4 years of Joe Biden as an absolute puppet, seeing the coup that took place with installing Kamala Harris as the Democrat candidate, not having a primary process with all of that, the lawfare that was involved with all the countless cases that, that they threw at Trump, and even the 2 assassination attempts, it really has opened up a lot of, the eyes of millions of Americans. And it really gave them the chance to come back with a team that was better than ever. And even when you look at how things have aligned, they tried to defeat him in the court cases. It didn't matter. He defeated Biden soundly in that first debate. And that really exposed to the normies. Now, I've got no doubt that Joe Biden was thrown out there as a sacrificial lamb. He was from the start. Anybody that was really following this closely, especially, in the last 4 years where, I've been doing commentary on YouTube and have spoken with other people, it was pretty obvious to us that Joe Biden was not fit to be president, and keeping him in the basement, really not running anything, the covering up of the Hunter Biden laptop just made it apparent to everybody what was going on. And I think we knew that he wasn't going to probably last the 4 years, or that he wouldn't run for re-election. It was obvious that Kamala was chosen as a DEI candidate, even though she was by far the worst in the field during the 2020 election cycle. She was the first one to drop out of that race on the Democrat primaries. So we all saw what the Democrats were doing. I think that we know what happened in the election in 2020. It's pretty obvious, especially when you saw what they tried to do on election night. This time around, it seemed like they were going to try to do, the same kind of moves. We saw that the media was almost waiting for it. They didn't want to call certain states because it seemed like they knew something that we didn't with what they were trying to pull off here. But at the end of the day, it was too big to rig. And I think what they really didn't expect was Donald Trump to win everything. The presidency, not only through the Electoral College, which is traditionally how Republicans have done it for the last couple of decades, but the popular vote, the Senate, and the House. They did not expect that to happen. And I think it completely destroyed whatever the primary plan for the Democrats was, which to me it was obvious they wanted to steal the election. That's what they were going to do. YouTube, you can go F yourselves if you have a problem with me saying that. We know everything that's happened here in the last few years. This is obvious that that's what they wanted to do. And we also know that had they not been able to pull off the Electoral College or the Electoral College win, they were probably 100% certain they were going to get that popular vote win. And then they could have, started the fight again. We need to eliminate the Electoral College. We can say that this is an illegitimate election. They would have tried to bring up the court cases with Jack Smith and tried to use Raskin's plan of somehow enacting the 14th Amendment and saying that he was the Insurrection Act and all of that to try to delegitimize his presidency. That's all gone out the window. It's all blown up. They can't use that narrative. They have a mandate now. Demographics that they didn't expect, namely Hispanics, Hispanic men, more specifically, you got the majority of them, 20% of black men, and plus 5% in suburban white women. all demographics that really I don't think the Democrat Party was expecting to lose, especially in the numbers that they did on top of the popular vote. And by the way, knowing that Kamala only won states that didn't require voter ID, that tells us that it would have been an even larger electoral landslide, or at a minimum, the popular vote landslide would have been massive, because it would have been much more difficult for illegal immigrants to vote in this previous election. And we know that they must have in a lot of the states that she won. So all of that was thrown out the window. Their 14th Amendment plan wasn't going to work. They won't be able to bring up anything with electors, because at this point, if it wasn't obvious just to people who supported Donald Trump and they've been watching this for years, it would be obvious to all of the normal Americans out there that are not politically engaged that some buffoonery and some shenanigans were going to take place, and that they would have tried to tip the scales in a certain direction here, namely to, try to take the election from Donald Trump. So I think that's all gone away. That's probably why you haven't seen mass protests in the street or anything like that, because I think despite the meltdowns that we're seeing, the left and the deep state are completely shocked. They're completely shocked by what is going on. And at this point, they're trying to regroup because they have no plausible deniability and no contingency plan in order to try to spin this. They've lost so completely that they are done. When you're seeing AOC now remove her pronouns from her bio in X, which honestly, we shouldn't even make a big deal about it, other than the fact that that tells us that we're starting to see a shift in their mentality and the way that they are thinking. They know that they can't run on the things that they did before. They know that the DEI issues, the transgender issues, the racism, the fascism, those narratives have been completely blown out of the water. The lawfare hasn't worked. So everything that they've done, all the capital that they've burned, all of their reputations have just been completely blown up. And now, honestly, what they need to do is completely change the Democrat Party and become a blue-collar working-class party the way that they were. But now they can't really do that either, because it's almost like Trump has taken the best of the old school Democrat Party, a lot of elements of the Libertarian Party, and, the patriotic elements of conservatism and constitutionalism, and melded them all together into this coalition that we'll see if it works in the long term, but it's very much a pro-freedom, empowering the individual, America first and American citizens first, a party and ideology that we're starting to see unfold here. And if it comes together with cohesion and with results, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Democrat Party to even recalibrate and recapture that until this coalition starts falling apart at some point, which it very well may. It's not anything that we've seen in American history before. And we know that Trump is a personality and a force of nature and an individual. He really is the movement. So can this be an Apple without Steve Jobs going forward and still find a path into the future? That's something that remains to be seen, and we'll have a few years to see how the results work as far as that's concerned. So that's pretty much where we are. We've seen the left-wing meltdowns online. I'm sure that you've all seen the Twitter videos of, women shaving their heads, saying that they're not going to have sex with men, even crazy stuff about poisoning spouses and significant others and all this craziness out there. So there's a lot of mental health issues going on right now when it comes to the results of this election. And Mark Halperin, in his interview with Tucker Carlson, had already mentioned that he was afraid that this was going to happen. And it is something that we are going to have to reckon with. And it really is the reason why, at this point, even if you're a little bit of a moderate Republican, even if you're reluctant to vote for Trump, I think that we all have to accept the fact that changes needed to happen. What the Democrat Party was espousing and what they believed in was pure evil. It really was. They wanted to eliminate our freedom of speech, take away our guns, manipulate and mutilate our children, and try to take total control of the internet and the means of communication while lying to us and perpetuating endless warfare throughout the globe. It really stood for everything that is anti-American and that is anti-human when you really get deeper into it. And definitely freedom of the individual and self-determination. So they do have to pay a price for this. And I do feel for a lot of the people that we're seeing, because they've gone completely mad. And I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that. There are potentially millions of people in this country that are going to have mental breakdowns and that are not going to be functional members of this society. And it's fun to laugh at the videos and all this stuff, but it is a serious problem that we're going to have to deal with. And it also means that we have to win so thoroughly going forward that we can't allow these people to come back, because they will have such a deep hatred and vengeance, unjustifiably so, I might add, for what we've been able to do and for what Trump has done, that they will be out for blood for sure. And they will not play the games. They won't be shocked the next time. They will be out to really come with the jackboot and crush everything. So we have to make as many changes as possible to diminish the size of the government, take away power from the federal government, discredit the media, empower independent news sources and all these other platforms, and really give power back to the people, so that if they do regain control somehow, they'll have such little, recourse that they're not going to be able to do anything. You can't give, especially in a society like the United States, things like the Patriot Act, things like that directive, that the Department of Defense directive that they pushed a few weeks ago, which would have authorized civilian or military use on American soil against civilians for questioning the election, pandemic related issues, things like that. They have now given Trump this power that Trump is in all likelihood he's not going to wield. It's what they were accusing him of doing, which is what the left often does, right? Accuse your enemies of what you yourself would do. And they now we have to take a lot of that stuff back and eliminate it and just restrict so much of what the federal government can do that it almost doesn't matter which side is in power. People will still be free, as far as wars and things like that. Border security, yes, they'll be able to change those things. Those are under the purview of the federal government. But if we get Congress to do what they're supposed to do, which is another big if, and something that we'll have to work on, then, we can really bring back the true system of checks and balances in this country and really push it forward. And Den Hawken with the $5 super chat. Stonks for more rants. Thank you, Den Hawk2, for the $5 super chat. Sorry about that. The stream had to restart, so I know some of you may be coming in late here because the link is going to be jacked up on X. So I apologize for that. And then the weird feedback that was going on at the beginning of the show. I'm not sure what that was all about. But anyway, we seem to be good to go. So that's pretty much where we are. That's what I think. That's where I think the left is. Do I think they're going to try some crazy things? Absolutely. They are. They can't help themselves. They've clearly not gone through a moment of introspection. So they're going to keep fighting. They are absolutely going to keep fighting. But their path, in order to be effective and to win hearts and minds, is really diminishing as the days go by. So let's go ahead and talk about the cabinet picks so far and what I think about each one of them, what some of my concerns may be. I think pretty much all of them will go through. Matt Gaetz may be the only one that's really going to have trouble, and we'll discuss a little bit about why. In case you don't know, it's not just because people don't like him. He's got a little bit more controversy surrounding him, but we'll see which way that goes. So I think we'll start with the easiest one, which to me is probably the one that's the most disappointing for most people, which is Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State. If you've listened to my last few rants, and if you've watched Mike Benz on any social media platforms or any streams that he's been on, whether it's, I believe he was on Tim Pool, he was on Dan Bongino, or not Dan Bongino's, Patrick Bet-David's show. He is formerly on the, he was formerly in the State Department, and he's really exposed a lot of the intelligence state and what they've done. So he's really the one that has opened my eyes in the real power behind the intelligence agencies, which is the State Department, and really educating me. And I do believe what he said. He's got the documents to back it up, that really since World War II, the U.S. has operated with almost two different governments, and that is the presidency and the domestic national United States, and the State Department, which controls the American empire through not only the State Department itself and its diplomatic tentacles, but the intelligence agencies, namely the CIA and the NSA. So what have they done? They've used economic hitmen to manipulate other countries and their natural resources to bring in American corporations to try to basically steal the natural resources or economic power bases of other nations, especially if they do things that the United States doesn't want to do, or if they're a threat to our economic prowess. We've used them to manipulate elections, spread propaganda, and obviously do other nasty things throughout the world. And they're the ones who've really given us that negative reputation. So it's really, I've almost come to the understanding that essentially the Secretary of State is the equivalent of what a prime minister would be in other countries, and really wielding almost that much power. In some countries, the prime minister is almost the full leader of everything, both national and international, like a Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. He's really the kind of the supreme leader, both domestically and internationally. They do have a president, but it's kind of a vestigial token position. In other countries, the prime minister is in charge, and in some, the president is in charge, but they handle domestic affairs, and it's really the prime minister is a more diplomatic position. But here, and this is what made Hillary Clinton so powerful when she was Secretary of State, because she was really running the show overseas, while Barack Obama was a figurehead domestically. And it explains a lot when you start thinking of things in that regard. Now, Marco Rubio, for a long time, I can't say that he wasn't the most terrible senator. He's obviously one of my senators here in Florida. He's the senior senator at this point, which is weird because he's much younger than Rick Scott. But Rick Scott was elected after him. So he's run for president of the Republican Party. Trump called him Little Marco. He was part of the Gang of Eight immigration reform that they tried to pass a few years earlier, which wasn't that great. He's really been groomed by the neocons, and I always felt that what he always wanted and what they were trying to position him for was to be almost the GOP's Barack Obama. So obviously he's much smarter. He's been involved with a lot more policy, but kind of that articulate minority, young face that you could put out there that would, push what the boomer cons would have wanted the entire time. So I don't really like him as a pick. I'm not sure if he made assurances to Trump, or maybe this was Trump's one concession to the neocons, that he'll put one person that they like. I do know that the good things that Rubio has done is that his stance on Trump seems to have completely changed over the last few years. So he's been kind of setting himself up in that regard of being more pro-MAGA, things like that. So I think he's been kind of trying to push into this position. He's been kind of a de facto senator for Puerto Rico, which, has been good for Puerto Rico. I don't have complaints about that. So he and Scott have done some good work there as far as the island is concerned, and, representing kind of their concerns and, helping spread conservatism in Puerto Rico. So I think those are some of the good things. he is very well educated. He's the son of Cuban immigrants, so he does hate communism. Those are all positive things. So we'll really see how much Trump can really keep him reined in and what he will do going forward. So that's my weakest pick. It's kind of a wait and see. He's definitely got the smarts. He's articulate enough to do the job, but he's very much a traditional GOP, kind of inside the beltway kind of guy right now. So, the jury is still out. I would have liked a different choice, but at this point, I think he's kind of put who I would have wanted in that position already in other positions within the federal, within his cabinet already. So that's a little bit of a moot point. We'll see how it works out. Number 2, let's go through Tom Homan, right, for as the border czar. I think Tom Homan kind of speaks for himself. If you've ever watched him on Fox News over the last few years, if you know that he was on an interim basis during Trump's first term, Tom Homan is a hard ass. He really is. And I think that he is going to do whatever it takes to secure the border, push back against the cartels, and work on this mass deportation. So he's going to be pretty relentless. He's going to be merciless. He's not going to be a guy that the media is going to like. And he will be one that I think a lot more moderate Republicans, maybe even evangelicals, people on the left that may have crossed the aisle for Trump, he's going to be one that's going to make a lot of them get nervous, because he's not going to BS around or pussyfoot around with anything that's going on with the border. He's going to shut things down. He's going to bust some skulls. He's going to change the environment of ICE and the Border Patrol, and he is going to hold people accountable. I think that we need to be realistic about Trump's term and what he can do, because there's going to be a lot of pushback. Realistically, he's got 2 years until the midterm elections. Historically, an incumbent president tends to get shellacked or lose a little bit of power in the midterm elections. So Trump is going to have to play things a little bit. He's going to have to politic things a little bit and be careful with how he handles the mass deportations. First of all, I'm going to be perfectly honest. Some people may not like this. It's an opinion, but I also think it's being realistic. We're not going to be able to deport the 15 or 20 million illegals in this country. It is logistically impossible. The problem is beyond anything that we can do. Even if we were to bring in the entire U.S. military to do it, we are not capable of doing that. It's not going to happen. It is just logistically impossible to do. So what can we do, and what is the best approach in order to tackle this issue? I think that there are a couple of things that you need to do. Number one, you have to focus. Trump is going to have to focus on the criminal elements that are here in this country. So you need to go after the cartels, the gangs, the criminal illegal aliens, and extremists, Islamic extremists. And if you can go after the Chinese too, if they've got illegals here that are setting up operations for the CCP, those are the groups that you need to go for first. Those are the ones that you really need to push for. And fining corporations egregious amounts of money for hiring illegal immigrants, and passing voter ID laws on the federal level that prevent states from giving driver's licenses to illegals, prevent them to vote. And I think that you need to push the Census Bureau once again to not count illegals as part of the population, because this empowers a lot of the blue states and gives them more representatives in Congress. That is something that we have to eliminate. Now, the first time around, he attempted to do this. They brought that lawsuit. They brought that case before the Supreme Court about not counting illegals in the census. There was a federal judge who put a universal injunction. And of course, we were going to bring the case, and Trump actually really wanted to defy this federal judge, which would have probably caused some sort of constitutional crisis, but it was also the right thing to do, I think, at the time. And Bill Barr basically told him, I went to bat for you with all of these, with the impeachment and all this stuff, with the Russian collusion. I'm not going to go to bat for you on this one. And then Trump had to drop it. So I think that now we can try this again. We have a more secure Supreme Court, and that's the strategy that we need to do. I think the companies need to be fined like $100,000 per illegal that they hire. I'm talking about amounts that will bankrupt corporations big and small. You need to do immigration raids. You don't necessarily need to arrest people immediately if they're not doing, violent stuff. They're not part of gangs. Obviously, everybody that crossed into this country illegally broke the law. So that is justification alone to deport them. But you also need to do this. You need to prioritize. You got to go through the hierarchy, right? Because again, as I've said, to deport 15 or 20 million people, it will probably take decades to do, because it took decades for these people to get in here in the first place. And the imagery of kicking down doors and ripping families apart and all that stuff, it's not going to look good. Even if it is the right thing to do for the American people and we have the legal basis to do so, you need to start winning. You need to get the American people accustomed to doing this. So you have to focus on the bad guys first and the real threats to national security and to safety of American citizens. We see that these Venezuelan gangs have now moved into Tennessee. According to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, they're in all their major cities, and Tennessee is about as red as it gets. So if they've already made it there, they can get anywhere. I have no doubts that Tennessee is going to crack down pretty seriously on these gangs, but there's going to be a lot of violence involved. When you go after the cartels, they're going to fight back. I think that, Trump does. We don't want to start new wars, but I think in order to root the cartels out, you really need to go after. You need to go after the money. You have to go after the left. What the left has built. They've built an apparatus of different organizations to get people into this country illegally. So you have to follow that money trail. You've got to bankrupt corporations and crack down on the fentanyl epidemic as well, because fentanyl has killed more Americans than any terrorist organization, and more civilians that have been killed. American civilians have died from the fentanyl and opioid pandemics than anything else in history. The Civil War is the only thing that rivals that. And that was mostly, obviously, military personnel on both in the Union and the Confederacy. So that may require eventually sending special forces units into Mexico to take out the cartels. The Mexicans are probably going to have some serious problems with that. Maybe using drones to do that. But again, that's going to bring in another can of worms of, well, that's going to be a foreign conflict and we didn't really want to start new wars. But that's probably something that we're going to have to deal with in at least specific cases, if not in mass. I think we're going to have to use the military to secure the border, to make sure that it just stop the flow of drugs, stops the CCP and terrorist organizations, Islamic terrorist organizations, from letting sleeper cells get into this country. We're going to have to crack down on that as well. We've been kind of quiet when it comes to Islamic extremism here in the United States, but it is a serious problem, especially in Europe, that we've been seeing, and I think they've been biding their time. And that's one vector where the Iranians can kind of try to stick it to us, because I've got no doubt that they've got a lot of sleeper terrorist cells embedded here. And the last thing that you would want in the United States is to have a multi-domain attack with multiple of our adversaries really causing us problems. So what do I mean by that? We know that we've been buying a lot of electrical power equipment from the Chinese. There's no doubt that they've embedded our power grid and that they can cause some serious damage with this. And it's not through EMPs or anything like that. It is just literally through, we bought all of their equipment. They can control it. They probably have back doors into it. And we do not do a good job of protecting our civilian infrastructure, especially our power grid, many parts of which are decades old. Now, the one weakness in our power grid is another strength in our power grid. And that is that it is so decentralized that the entire U.S. grid probably cannot be taken down in one fell swoop. But if every major power corporation, even though each state does things a little bit differently, happens to have critical infrastructure that was manufactured by Chinese corporations, then that could be a serious issue. And that really will be our Achilles heel and something that will completely devastate this country almost more than anything else. The cartels are fanatical, in some cases almost to the level of Islamic extremism. We know this. They're some of the most savage people that you'll ever see on this planet. You know the stories that come out of Mexico with them beheading civilians, killing mayors and government officials, going after the military in Mexico. So these are hardened people. They've worked with some Islamic extremists, in some cases with training and smuggling and weapons. So as Trump said in the past, that he got criticized for, these are some tough hombres. And they have no qualms about going after politicians and going after civilian families. So we will have to deal with them and hunt them down with extreme prejudice. And I think that that's something that the American people can get behind, especially when we've been seeing, the child trafficking in this country, when we've been seeing our, mothers and daughters get murdered and raped by these people, and everything else under the sun. So there is a motivation to go after these people and to go after them hard, and that is what we need to focus on. So once again, I think Homan is going to be he's going to be great at this job. He's going to be a hard ass, and we have to prioritize things correctly. I think that once you start cracking down on the cartels, the gangs, terrorist organizations, and CCP elements within the country, and making it essentially impossible for corporations to hire illegals, and you make it so that illegals can't vote at all, they can't get driver's licenses, they pretty much can't participate in society, not giving any sort of benefits or anything like that to them, which a lot of these blue states do give benefits, you'll start seeing what we would call remigration. People will realize that America is closed for business, and they will start leaving on their own, especially when they start seeing the bad guys go down in raids. And then after the bad guys are done, you start moving up on the list. So it may be a problem that partially solves itself in the long run. But you do have to disincentivize in every way illegal immigration to the United States. It's really the only thing that we can do here. And I think it will probably be the best approach with the least amount of chaos, so to speak. And it will also prevent the media from creating these narratives, which we know they're going to do. They're going to show families being separated. They're going to show raids on, immigrant neighborhoods and all this stuff. They're going to try to make this as painful as possible for the Trump administration and make the American people feel terrible about it. In some cases, we are going to feel terrible about it. I understand why a lot of people would want to leave, the countries that they do, because terrible things are happening there. But we can't allow the United States, our home, to become a third world country and to get invaded by a lot of people that mean to do us harm, and then other people that they may not want to do us harm, but they're going to drag our entire system down. And then Americans, people who've actually worked hard their entire lives, who paid into the systems, who have rights as citizens, they're the ones that are going to suffer. And I would much rather resources go to our deteriorating cities, our infrastructure, and Americans who are suffering from drug abuse and a mental health crisis to get the help that they need, our veterans as well, than people who aren't from this country, whether they're good and especially if they're bad. So that's just a fact of the matter. That's the reality. We see how Europe is falling apart because of their unchecked and woke policies on immigration, and they really have gotten to the point of no return in many cases. They are not going to be able to solve, especially countries like Great Britain, it seems. If you've been seeing what's been going on in the Netherlands with the violence that they're having, the anti-Semitism, all that stuff, we're not going to be able to, they're not going to be able to do anything about that. They're at the point where they would need their militaries to go in to do stuff, and their militaries are too weak and meek to do anything about it. So I personally think that Europe and some European countries are done. They're done. They will not be able to solve this problem without really cracking down and being authoritarian against immigrants, which is going to be an even worse time to solve it, because you may see them devolve into, sectarian violence and civil wars in some cases. So I don't know how they're going to resolve that issue. I think that you're going to have to take away all benefits. I think the only thing they can do, and even when they do this, they're dealing with populations that become violent for no reason. When you import the third world and you don't teach them how to be civilized or Western values, you're going to get third world savagery. That's just the way it is. And that's not me being politically correct or being racist. It's the truth. We tried nation building in the Middle East. It doesn't work. There is an incompatibility between certain religions and Western values, especially when it comes to positive feminism and equal rights. It's just not going to work. Sharia law is not compatible with Western values. It is absolutely not. And it should never be allowed to infiltrate any of these countries. So when you try to eliminate that, they are going to fight against you at every turn. And you're dealing with a population of people who are not going to be afraid to fight with a population of people who have been completely soy-boyed and destroyed by their toxic empathy in these societies. So that's something that we don't want to happen here. And to some extent, it already has in certain areas. But thankfully, we have pushed back enough and we have the wherewithal, and there are enough strong men and women in the United States who aren't going to allow that to happen. So we are going to push back against this, and I think that we can be successful. But we do know that our rivals in the media and on the left are going to make it very painful, and they're going to try to demonize us the way they have. The good thing is that they've lost a lot of credibility. So if we do this in the way that I kind of prescribed, and I'm sure, President Trump and his team know this, and they need to be realistic too. And I think we as the voters and we as the American people also need to be realistic and have patience for this. Trump has a very ambitious agenda, especially for 4 years. He's got the right team in place. He's not going to be able to achieve all of it. And that doesn't mean that he was lying. It's that he's literally going to try to undo 100 years nearly of the bureaucratic state and the mess that we've gotten into. Some messes that we've been in for more than 150 years at this point within the federal government. You're not going to be able to fully unravel it in 4 years. But this was what makes it important that he has to be successful in especially his first 2 years, because we need JD Vance or whoever comes afterwards, probably will be JD, and this team to continue going forward, because I think this is going to take at least 3 terms of a presidency, of conservative presidents, to really turn all of this around. So if you want to be successful, it's going to be key to do it right away. So hello, everybody. I haven't said hello to the chat. I've just kind of gone in on this. I see we got 20 people here. Smash that like button, hit the subscribe. If you want to support the show, we're on Rumble, we're on X. You can give in Cash App. If you want to give a super chat or give some subs, that's great. I appreciate it. It's never necessary. I see we've got Den Hawk Tua again gave this $5 super chat. A2D2, Dark Jera, Blue Shell, Draw 4, Deceptic, and R. Leone. How's it going, everybody? Great to see you all here, and I appreciate you. I know that we had some issues at the start of the show. And Rumble, we've got Janica over on the Rumble side, and hello to everybody that is on X. X is weird because it doesn't like to play, it hasn't liked changing my titles here, so it's always the title of my previous stream when I use Restream, which is really, really annoying. So it's Friday Night Fortnite with La Familia, which is driving me nuts over here. But it is what it is. But hello to everybody on X. X does have a chat if you click on the video. So if you want to chat over there, I would encourage it as well. We're on all the platforms doing all the things. So if you don't like YouTube because they can be oppressive and you don't want to give them any money, jump on one of the other platforms. Drop a Rumble rant if you want. Or you can use Cash App if you want to contribute to the show and what we're doing here. I appreciate all of you. So again, with this these opening monologues lately, I've been going on full open rants that last more than an hour lately. Not something that I thought I was capable of doing, but this election cycle and this news cycle has really given me so much to talk about that this has become very easy. So we talked about Marco Rubio. We talked about Tom Homan. Let's go to Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence. So what does the Director of National Intelligence do? Because you kind of think of, wait, we've got the CIA, we've got the NSA, we've got, Homeland Security, which it looks like we've got Kristi Noem there. Not really my favorite pick, to be honest, either. Kristi Noem's been a governor, but we know that she's also killed dogs in the past, and that really bothers me. So that probably down there with Rubio is my least favorite choice for this cabinet position, and I'm not sure. I never would have guessed and have chosen her for Homeland Security. So I guess we'll see with her. I don't really have much to say other than that. So, we'll have to see what she does. She's been a decent governor in South Dakota. A lot of people have liked her. They like how she handled COVID in her state. The economy's done well in South Dakota, especially with the oil shale boom that they've had there. So, we'll see about Kristi. I think that you could have done worse. But again, not really my first choice for Director of, Homeland Security. Homeland Security is a very strange organization at this point because it was really created in the aftermath of September 11 and the failures of the intelligence agencies, or maybe the intelligence agencies did what they did and they allowed certain failures to occur on purpose to consolidate their power and give us the Patriot Act later on and push us into these wars that didn't end for 2 decades. I don't know. That's just me being conspiratorial. But, it was really created to be a nexus point for all of the domestic and foreign intelligence agencies to be able to pool all their information and to have one location where decisions could be made and intelligence could be shared. It's really become a catch-all organization and a massive bloated law enforcement organization, so to speak. You've got ICE, CBP. You've got the Coast Guard in there now too. So it's really kind of like domestic border defense and immigration and all that stuff. So it's kind of an amalgamation. It's not exactly what it was supposed to be. Hopefully, Kristi's executive experience as a governor can help there. But I think having Homan as the border czar is going to assist her greatly in that regard. So that's always good. Next one that we can focus on, obviously, I think the most fun that we're all having is with Vivek and Elon, creating DOGE, which is the Department of Government Efficiency. I think if you had told me a year ago that Elon was going to be the one that saved Donald Trump's presidency and that would become essentially his closest confidant in organizing everything, I would have told you that you were just totally high on something, and you've gone completely crazy. But I think that there's no doubt that that's exactly what Elon has become. I think that him tag teaming with Vivek is an excellent choice because Vivek has been talking about how to consolidate and eliminate a lot of these government organizations since he started his run for the presidency a couple of years ago and throughout the primary process. So I think they're both excellent choices. We know what Elon was able to do in the corporations that he owns and in the purchase of Twitter. He was able to eliminate 90% of the workforce. And I think we would all argue that X is a much better company now, especially as far as freedom of speech, than they ever were before when they were Twitter. So it's going to be an unstoppable team. I think I like how they're essentially going to be separate kind of from the government. So almost like an oversight committee more than anything else that will give suggestions to President Trump and his cabinet on, almost in an advisory role. I think the fact that, you've embraced the meme era. I think that's been one of the most powerful things that the Trump campaign has been able to do. And I think it's been a major success on the right, because we know that the left can't meme, and being able to make fun of your enemies and make a joke out of things really minimizes them in a lot of ways, and in just a way that even, force or rhetorical debate just can't do. It really is a unique way. It's very disarming, and embarrassment is more effective than brute force sometimes. And it's really just been a craw in the side of all the left in the media for the last couple of years. So I think that they're going to do a great job. I'm interested to see what they're going to slash, how quickly they can do it, and some of the recommendations that they're going to have. They're really only going to be around for 2 years, until the 250th anniversary of the United States, July 4th, 2026. I think the symbolism behind that is fantastic. And they're going to have a lot of work cut out for them. There's no doubt. So, but if there's anybody that can do it, it's those two. I think you're going to have a perfect melding of two individuals who've run corporations before, who are articulate and know how to have fun. And I think the way that Elon handles criticism online is fantastic, because he's able to ridicule and make people look stupid without being an asshole about it. So it's a very disarming approach. Vivek really kills people with kindness. I don't think I've ever seen a politician or an individual, especially on the right, that is able to explain big issues to normal people and really change their minds. And people on the left, if you've ever seen him talk to college students that come out hard against him, or protesters, he really is empathetic in his tone. He's able to explain things in ways that people can understand. Even when he was on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, Charlemagne didn't want to concede to him, but you can tell that he just couldn't assail any of the points that Vivek was making. And Vivek just comes off as so inoffensive when he makes these points that you're just like, I mean, how can I not agree with what this guy is telling me right now? He's not even getting upset about it, and he just explains it from top to bottom. So it's going to be an extremely powerful combination. The memes are going to be through the roof. The Dogecoin is already going to the moon. So I see nothing but good things about Doge. And I think if they keep the mascot of Doge and make it all fun with that, with a coat of arms, I think it'll be fantastic. So I think it'll be good. A lot of people don't trust Vivek. I can see that. I do. I think he's kind of proven himself already. I think that just because people have a good education and went to certain schools doesn't mean that we don't have to trust them. I think his understanding of history and the way that he articulates it really says a lot. So he's really given me no reason to not trust him right now. And honestly, if we don't trust him, we can't really trust Elon either, because Elon is coming up with Neuralink. He's got driverless cars. Elon really is pushing all of the technology that an authoritarian or some sort of antichrist-like figure would be dying to have. And if the government could turn Elon into to the side of authoritarianism, then we'd basically all be screwed. So I think that there are a lot of people within this administration now that really could cause us a lot of grief in the future if they turn out not to be legitimate. But you have to take people at their word at a certain point, especially when they have good ideas. And that's how I feel about both Elon and Vivek. So they could be the best and the worst thing that could happen to us, if we're being completely honest. Give me a second here. Sorry, I had to sneeze, and I didn't want you guys to get deafened or see all that either. How's it going, Fredo B from California? I am sorry that you're out there, and I apologize for all the terrible things that Gavin Newsom is going to do in revenge, for vengeance against Trump's victory. It really sucks for you guys. I'm mounted a huge thirst here. So we've gone through Doge, we've gone through Homeland Security, we've gone through the border czar, we talked about Secretary of State. So thank you so much, A2. I appreciate the bless you. So now our next one is going to be Tulsi for Director of National Intelligence. So the Director of National Intelligence is basically going to be your czar when it comes to all of the intelligence services in the United States. So it is, they're the head of the intelligence community of the United States, and they oversee the National Intelligence Program. So all of your good stuff like the CIA, the NSA, all that stuff, the DNI checks all of that out and provides the president's daily brief on what's going on in the world. And it's an extremely high-level cabinet position. I think that there's a lot of irony and reckoning here. I was listening to Steve Deace earlier, and he really articulated this point well, that a lot of the people, the damage that the deep state and the left have tried to perpetuate on the American people, and the damage that they've done, not just attempted to do, deserves punishment. It does. And punishment doesn't mean throwing people in the gulags or anything like that. Now, if they've performed illegal acts and we can prove it through investigations, then obviously, yes, they deserve to go to prison. But there needs to be punishment in the sense that we have to take away their power and their ability to do damage like this again. And we really have to put in people that make their policies a mockery and that are a huge contrast. So I think, and some of it needs a little bit of poetic justice. I really do. And I think the irony of calling Tulsi Gabbard a Russian asset for years, from when she was running as the candidate on the Democrat side for the presidency, a veteran of the U.S. military who has a great record, a woman who's pushed back against the foreign wars, and who has had a full political conversion. Here's another one that, do we trust her or not? I think that we can. And again, we have to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? At this point. The fact that they put her on the terror watch list and the no-fly list, that they've accused her of being an asset for foreign adversaries, and now she's in charge of the very agencies that did that, that is poetic justice. That really is. And it's another great choice that really, really sticks it to the deep state and the left in this country. And I know that it has them fuming. I think it's just pick after pick after pick after pick that Trump has put in there. And it is not only people who are well qualified, even if they haven't directly worked in the agencies or with the agencies that they've been chosen, they have experience in other ways. I think it really is an astounding power move, and it really shows that he's not messing around. And I think one of the complaints that we can field towards Trump, and part of it was, again, that he was a political novice in his first term. He chose some people who weren't great, who did not push his agenda very well, and who backstabbed him. Is there are times when he was so far the opposite of what the left accused him that it was almost a little bit annoying. There were times when we wanted probably Trump to be a little bit tougher than he was. And so now I think he's finally doing what we wanted him to do. And it's because he does have a mandate from the American people to really be able to push change in this country. I think that there needs to be massive reform of the intelligence agencies from the top for sure. We know that they have been pushing and running almost as a cartel throughout the world. So the State Department with the intelligence agencies has been causing havoc, both domestically and across the planet, doing terrible things, pulling us into conflicts that we have no business being in, and really destroying the reputation of the United States throughout the world. And now they've turned a lot of those intelligence assets inward to the United States, using using various acts, repealing various acts that now allow propaganda to be used in the United States. So I think that that's where we really need to, look at a few different things here. And that's where we need to expose a lot of this. So that's what we need here. And I think Tulsi is going to be a good choice in that regard. And I think that she'll serve honorably. And she'll get to the bottom of a lot of different things. I think that she'll expose a lot of the corruption within the intelligence agencies. And I think that she will also, really prove what she's got. I think that she's proven to be articulate. She's extremely intelligent. And she'll be in a very powerful position to make some changes and reforms that I think will absolutely be good. So I'm happy to see her there. We just had RFK announced as the HHS director. So we're going from Admiral Levine, who is a man posing as a woman, an absolute joke and a mockery to the United States on basically every level, a slap in the face to the United States and a true symbol of not only DEI, but the transgender madness that the left has been perpetuating for the last few years, to now RFK, who is the enemy of the pharmaceutical industrial complex, an advocate for health in this country, and a member of perhaps the most well-known political family, political dynasty really in this country's history, and a staple of Democrat Party politics for like 70 years at this point. That really tells you everything that you need, right? And it just goes once again to how much better off Trump now is going into this second term after losing in 2020 than he would have been the first time. Can you imagine Trump having a second term with a lot of the losers that he had in his cabinet the first time? He may have done a decent job, but there's no way that he would have been able to push the change that he can now. And it also would have, allowed the left to remain dormant for years and possibly not have changes when we really needed them. So I think that is pretty much, that's the reason why he got elected now, and why, despite the fact that he had a negative approval rating while being elected, the American people chose him, and they chose him on every level, both electorally and through the popular vote. And I think it also should give us hope, because that means that more of the normies out there are willing to be discerning. They're willing to say, you know what, I may not like this person, but I think that they can do a good job. So we know that the popularity contest isn't always going to win, because I think a good approach is to think of, if you ever watched that show, House MD, had that doctor played by Hugh Laurie, where he was pretty much an asshole. Everybody hated him. He was insufferable, but he was the best doctor around. He could pretty much solve any problem, any medical mystery. But his bedside manner was pretty terrible. So it really goes to show that people are willing to say, you know what, I'd rather have the best person for the job, even if I don't like their personality, rather than have somebody who may be more fun, who can go on all these stupid podcasts, who brings all these celebrities around, but is an idiot. Let's be honest, an idiot and a communist. So thankfully, the American people are capable of being more discerning than I even thought before, and they're not falling for the crap. So will this happen the next time around? I don't know, but I think that there is a shift that is going on right now. Captain Pop has it going endless, and Rafter Man. So that's pretty much where we're at. So, and that's really what happens. Sometimes you have to be humbled in order for things to happen. You really do, in order to come out. And throughout history, we've always seen that. I think we've definitely seen it biblically, where different people have been chosen in order to do certain things. And despite having some trolls that don't believe in this, look, you're on the losing side of history. The American people have already voted en masse that they wanted Donald Trump. And I can tell you that if Donald Trump was an insurrectionist, Rafterman, it was the worst insurrection that was ever perpetuated in history, because you had the side that has all the guns that went into the Capitol with no guns whatsoever. And the government has continued to perpetually cover up how many federal agents were involved there. And oh, by the way, they also didn't talk about the real insurrection where Antifa and BLM protesters made it to the perimeter of the White House, burned down the church, and almost broke the security perimeter. But because you have a left-wing propagandist media that does nothing but perpetuate lies for the deep state and the left-wing propagandists on the left, you may not have known that. Or you're a disingenuous liar just like everybody else on the left. So you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. And Donald Trump is the president that we need right now. Is he the most articulate guy? No, he isn't. I didn't vote for him in 2016 because I thought he was actually a left-wing Trojan horse. But there's no doubt, especially after losing in 2020, that he is the best man for the job that we have right now. And it really comes down to being able to choose a great team around you. And there will be a reckoning. There will be an absolute reckoning for what the left has tried to do and the authoritarians have tried to do in this country. And so that's what we're seeing here. Elections have consequences, and these are the consequences of evil policies, lies, and corruption. So that's just pretty much where we're at. And no, we don't believe that either. Look, I think it's fairly obvious that we do know what happened in 2020. There was a mass operation to try to take that election. And I think it's become more and more obvious as the years have gone by. But hey, that's something that we can agree to disagree on. At this point, it's pretty obvious that we've won and it doesn't matter. And no, it doesn't have to do with loyalty. It has to do with my disdain for the authoritarian left. So at this point, I'm going to give the man the benefit of the doubt because there's no one who's been more persecuted in the office of the president than Donald Trump. And there's no person who has also exposed the lies of the federal government, the far left, and the media industrial complex than Donald Trump. So that's really where we're at with that one. So that's really all I have to say about that. So we've got Tulsi as the DNI. I think she's going to do a great job there. I think that RFK, we already know where he comes from his push against, the pharmaceutical companies and the lies that have been told there, trying to clean up chemicals in the water and chemicals in food, make America healthy again. I think that that's something where the right really hasn't competed on or talked about in a long time, or really ever. And I think that that would be great. So that's how it is. So that's really where it is when it comes to that. I think he's going to do a fantastic job. And I think again, had the cycle not worked out the way that it did, had the Democrat Party actually tried to have a primary, we'd be having a very different story here, because it really is a godsend that RFK ran as an independent and also had the wherewithal to see that once he saw how corrupt the Democrat primary process was and how they weren't going to have a primary and how they had isolated him and tried to have attempts to prevent him from getting on the ballot, it really opened the door for him to try to make a run as an independent and to try to join forces with Donald Trump, which he ultimately did, which has now been a massive boon to the MAGA movement and to the right. And it really is allowing the Republican Party to switch more to a populist movement and move away from the neocon warmongering party that it really has been for a long time. So that's how it is. So Rafterman, you're more than welcome to watch my previous podcast, and you can see what all of my what all of my policies here, you can also go to the beginning of the podcast and you can check those things out, because I really don't need to discuss them. And I'm not going to debate somebody who is clearly delusional on the side of the left as well. So, I mean, once you throw out the word fascist for a man that believes in capitalism, when, let's be honest, the true fascists are the Democrat Party and the neocons, because they've been colluding with major corporations in the media to push propaganda and authoritarianism in this country. So you're all blinded by the fallacy of racism and race with fascism, but really it's an economic system in which the government and corporations collude with one another to take away the power of the individual. So that's really where we're at here. That's real fascism. There's no fascism on this side. We believe in freedom of the individual, self-determination, gun rights, and all of that good stuff. And at this point, we also know that there's been corporate welfare perpetuated by both sides of the aisle, whether it's with the military-industrial complex, pharmaceutical companies, and everything like that. So we know that's where it is. That's really where we're going with that. So, yes, and I'm okay with deporting 20 million people. I'm totally okay with that. Will he be able to do it? No, he's not going to be able to do it. I don't think realistically. But I'm totally okay with it, because I'm also tired of the American people constantly getting destroyed with their taxes, being sent in endless foreign wars that don't benefit us whatsoever, being the police of the entire world, and allowing our jobs to go to foreign companies because we want cheap products. So we need to bring a lot of this stuff back, empower the American people, and bring back a lot of those jobs and change certain things. The United States economy functioned completely off of tariffs for almost the first 200 years, or the first 100 years of its history. The income tax wasn't introduced until 1913. So with a smaller government that's not policing the entire world and sending its war machine everywhere and sucking dry the American people, yes, that is something that you can run. And guess what? If you bring back American jobs, innovation, and corporations, you don't have to worry about tariffs if you make most of your products and purchase most of your energy here. We've already seen a lot of countries that are starting to onshore those businesses. It's going to take time, and you will have to balance all of that. So that's pretty much where we're at with that. So that's the answer that I have to those questions. So let's move on now. We're going to move on to Pete Hegseth is the DOD. Well, we can talk about Matt Gaetz, because Matt Gaetz is going to be the most controversial pick right here. So we're going to go ahead and check that out right now. So Matt Gaetz is the pick that I know that shocked a lot of people. It even shocked me when I heard about it. I personally thought that he was going to go with Ken Paxton, for the AG from Texas, but he's decided to go with Matt Gaetz. Now, Matt Gaetz is obviously a firebrand within Congress. He's pushed back against the Republican establishment, and he was the subject of a DOJ investigation a few years ago that had to do with trafficking and drug use going across state lines with a minor. It's an interesting story, because obviously, here's what I would have to say about this. In a DOJ that was going after Donald Trump, that was trying to throw the book at him, that's gone after other Republicans, that's even gone after members of the media that were just reporting on January 6th, that went into the Capitol, that were documenting things, that's been willing to throw the book at all of them, didn't even press charges against him. Even though he was a huge pain in the ass for the Democrats, a huge pain in the ass for the GOP, establishment. So why would that DOJ drop that investigation? So that's really the biggest question that I would have. So if that's the concern, it would be a legitimate concern, but there has to be a reason why the DOJ dropped that and did not even pursue charges. So we do work on an innocent until proven guilty standard in this country. That's the way that it's always been. So that's where I would point to all of that. Now, the House Ethics Committee was looking into that. He did resign from the House. I don't know if they'll continue that investigation. Here is what I would say. And I think that this works for anything, right? We're facing a reckoning. And I wouldn't want somebody on my side of the aisle that would be proven to have done something like that. I don't. So I think we should have a hearing. And in a hearing, you can bring up witnesses and you can try to vet him. And if you can get proof that he may have done something wrong, then you just don't approve him. And Trump has to choose somebody else. So I think that's pretty simple. I think the Democrats are going to go hard on this. I think a lot of the establishment Republicans are going to go hard on this. So let's bring it out. Now, I wonder if there are a couple of reasons why they didn't pursue this. Now, either they have nothing because they lied about it. And the gentleman that, I have heard the other side of the story, that the gentleman that went to prison that Gates was supposedly associated with was trying to blackmail his father in order to get, some sort of political benefit from this, and was willing to blackmail Gates on this. That's something that we need to prove. And maybe that's what the DOJ found out and they decided to drop out on it. Maybe it is that child trafficking is such a pervasive issue within Congress that both the left and the right are participating in this. And in exposing Gates will expose a lot of other politicians who may be doing this. Either way, if we get to the bottom of it through a confirmation hearing, I think that that's not a bad thing. Either way, we're going to get some sort of benefit out of this, because either we eliminate somebody who clearly is a bad dude, or we find out why the DOJ didn't do it and that they were blackmailing him all along and that it was a rumor that was pushed as a lie. So it's pretty easy where we can go about with all of this. So that's pretty much what I would say. I do think that it's clearly a choice that shows that Trump is going to go after people that may have investigated him in the past and try to get to the bottom of that. Revenge politics isn't necessarily what we need. We do need to make changes and reform. If you've watched Gates on Tim Pool and other shows, I think that a lot of his policies are pretty sound. Wanting to push single issue bills within the House. I think the Freedom Caucus has tried to do a lot of great things on the Republican side and trying to hold the GOP old guard well. I think that you can handle things a little bit better. I know that the meme lords and the trolls and the troll army on Twitter, I know they love Matt Gaetz. It is what it is. Again, elections have consequences. You're going to put the people that you want in. I think Ken Paxton would have done an amazing job. I think a Mike Lee would have done an amazing job in that role as well. I think that their legal resumes are pretty sound when it comes to that. But if you're secure enough that Gates didn't commit these acts, and if you're not afraid of what the confirmation battle is going to be, then it is what it is. 9 out of 10 or however many cabinet positions, having one that may be really controversial is not bad. Now, the one thing that I would say it's really if you understand the art of the deal with Donald Trump, and if you understand even what a lot of politicians, especially on the left, have done for a long time, is that sometimes you go for the big ask. So we know that just choosing Tulsi, Pete Hegseth, Tom Homan, and a few of his other choices made the establishment media go crazy. They were going wild. So by picking somebody who's so polarizing like Matt Gaetz, it almost takes away a lot of the oxygen from the room, and it takes away a lot from those other candidates. So if you want me to be really cynical, and I think this would be kind of a dirty move on Trump's part, especially since Gaetz has been extremely loyal to him and a huge advocate for him. Is it possible that Trump has chosen him knowing that he may lose in confirmation, but also knowing that he could use him as a negotiating chip. Now, this is my own theory. I've not heard anybody say this. I just understand a little bit about the art of the deal and the big ask and how this is done. And we've seen the left do this with a lot of bills, something that the right should probably do a little bit more often, especially when it comes to gun issues. You know that I've asked about this in the past for a while, especially when it comes to repealing the National Firearms Act. It's where if I were to go as a Second Amendment absolutist and I would want to pass a Second Amendment style bill, I would want to pass a bill that clarifies the Second Amendment and says that civilians should be able to codified. Now, if you go by the letter of the Second Amendment, you should be able to own cannons and things like that. I mean, there used to be privately owned warships back in the day. I would go with, well, you know, civilians should be able to own F-22s and missiles and all these things and artillery and tanks that are functional, you know, just under the Second Amendment if they can afford them. And that would be my position. I would want to pass a bill like that, knowing that it would never get passed. But then I could say, well, just give me machine guns and suppressors without them being registered, and we'll call it a day. So when you go from asking for missiles and fighter jets to just asking for machine guns, that's a huge difference. You've taken like 90% of the craziness that the other side may be looking at out of the room. And now you're saying, well, look, I'm willing to compromise here. I only want machine guns and suppressors that are unregistered. Then the other side may be like, look, we got a huge victory. These guys were asking for missiles and all this stuff. We only gave them machine guns. So this is a win. Like, this is bipartisanship right here. So that's what the big ask is, right? You go for something that's really crazy, that's really out there. The Green New Deal was an example on the left where it's like, well, we want to, you know, eliminate, you know, cows because they give off CO2 emissions. But if you give us, you know, tax incentives on greenhouse gases and carbon capture credits and things like that, then, you know, we might be okay with that. So they start with a really extreme position and then they lower it to something that is still extreme by many accounts. But because you've been so distracted and bamboozled by that extreme position, now it feels like, oh, well, this is much more reasonable, right? So you go with you go with Matt Gaetz. You go with Matt Gaetz, and then you say, okay, if you guys don't give me Matt Gaetz, I'll ask for a Ken Paxton, but you guys have to give me, you know, Hegseth Tulsi and everybody else, and Tom Homan. And then everybody's like, you know what, you're right. Like these people are much more reasonable than a Matt Gaetz in our position. And then that's how you play the game right there. I don't think that Trump would necessarily do that to Gaetz. I think that would piss off a lot of people on the MAGA side, but in a shrewd art of the deal kind of move, that could be the out there play, or it's at least a contingency plan, knowing that he's going to be the toughest one to get in. You may end up exposing him because if you go through a full confirmation hearing, they're going to bring this up, and the left is definitely going to try to look for witnesses. So this is going to be settled once and for all. Now, Trump has supposedly negotiated for recess appointments with John Thune already. That's the word on the street. So technically, he can confirm a few of his high-level cabinet members without really Senate approval, and they can sit, I believe, for 2 years is how it would work. So he could also pull that move off, and maybe he's already negotiated that, and it may be, you know, a moot point. But if he wants to play the game a little bit without having to do that and you know, going through the sketchiness of a recess appointment, then these are all the options that are kind of on the table here. So this is just me kind of speculating completely. So and again, yeah, CNT Design and Arms, you see that. So that's what you do. Going for the big ask is a pretty common move in business and in politics. So this could be the big ask moment. You know, I'm going for Gaetz. That's the Hail Mary. Probably not going to get him, but he makes everyone else look a lot less extreme by, you know, by every account. So that's where I think that's kind of stands. All right, so now we've spoken about Gaetz. Again, if you want to know about a lot of Gaetz's positions, I think politically and in a legal sense, he's pretty sound. He's a bit of an asshole. He looks like a sleazy car salesman. If I'm being honest, I know some of the other right wingers and the MAGA people in the Twitter sphere will probably be like, oh well, blah blah blah. I'm just saying. Sometimes you can go with what you think about somebody, even again if you still choose them for the job. That's just the way that it is. You can be like, you know what, I don't like this guy, but they're probably going to do a decent job, and they're going to push the agenda that I want and the mandate that I have. So it is the way that it is. But if he's got all this baggage, and if there's any legitimacy to any of the allegations, then obviously that's something that that should try to be exposed. And if it does, then hey, that's good. We've rooted somebody on our side that we don't want. But there's got to be a reason why a left-wing DOJ didn't press charges against him and continue an investigation. So there's something to there has to be a little bit of logic there when you think about it, because why wouldn't they have taken him down? That's really all I have to say there, and that's where I kind of am like, all right, I think I can see where this is going and why you would do this and take a gamble here. Obviously, this leaves Florida a little bit open here because now we've lost Marco Rubio as a senator. Maybe not that big of a deal. We have to have a special election for Gates's district. It's like 2-1 Republican over Democrat. It's in Pensacola in the very tip of the panhandle. That's probably not going to be a big deal. Gates already resigned, so Gates is essentially all in here. Now, would he do the super crazy move where if Gates doesn't get confirmed, DeSantis makes Gates the senator of Florida instead of being a congressman, and now the Senate has to deal with him forever anyway? I don't know. That could be another crazy move. I guess they could nominate Laura Trump to be the senator of Florida. There's a lot of other crazy things that can go down here. So I agree, Den Hawken. Yes, his picks are all over the place, and it shows that we've got a broad coalition going forward. It's kind of like I described at the beginning of the show. He's taken elements that kind of good elements from, old school liberalism, some libertarianism as far as trying to decrease the size of government and eliminate certain taxations. If he wants to try to eliminate the income tax, reduce taxes, things like that. Obviously, tariffs is going old school. You're going to the beginning of the U.S. history and how the U.S. government made money at the time. And then you're bringing in more of the pro-America, patriotic a wing of the conservative movement of the past. And obviously with a smaller government, that kind of goes hand in hand with the libertarianism element there. So it's kind of an amalgamation of the three political movements that exist within the United States combined with populism. So it's very interesting. Again, it depends on how you think about things. I think that there is a spiritual element with things that are going on, which means it could also fail, right? I think that the U.S. got a reprieve from the path that we were going down. It was going to be an authoritarian and honestly, it was an evil path with a lot of what was being pushed by the left and the deep or the intelligence state, really, and the neoconservatives. To now, if this works out, it really can be the best. If it fails, then the movement is done for a long time, and the far left authoritarians will get a chance, and they'll come back with a vengeance. So either way, it's really up to the American people to live up to a standard that we used to have, an honorable standard, one full of morality and faith, and one that is pro-family, and one that is moralistic, which we've moved away from a lot of that in basically every level for decades. So this is a chance to right the path and be people that are worthy of the country that we've been given. Because for a long time, I think the American people haven't behaved as if they're worthy of having a country with these kinds of freedoms. We really haven't. We've not held our leaders accountable, and we've gotten the leaders that we deserve because we're not paying attention, and we've been too selfish and insular rather than trying to do the right things by ourselves and by our neighbors. That's just my Christian viewpoint coming out here. I'm always going to look at things through that lens as well. Take it or leave it. It is what it is. But I think that is the case. I think America was being judged. I think we've gotten a reprieve but just as many civilizations, or just as we've seen with the Israelites throughout the scriptures, there were times when they chose poorly and they paid the consequences too. So for every King David, you'll get a Saul, and that's just how it works. And sometimes you'll get punished for it. So you do get the leader that you deserve. And so we'll see the way that this works out. I happen to think that this is going to work out in a good direction, but we'll see. So we'll see where it goes as far as that's concerned. All right, Pete Hegseth, I think, is the last one that we've got of all the big ones. I think that of all the choices that he's made, Pete Hegseth as the head of the DOD is my favorite, especially if you've read some of Pete's books. If you watched his interview, which I recommend that you guys check out on the Sean Ryan podcast. I think for years, the boomer generation has brainwashed a lot of us to believe that leaders have to be people over the age of 60 years old, and we can't function without it. I think as millennials and Gen Z, because we've been so disappointed by our own peers, and we've seen a lot of the insanity and ignorance of people who are in their 30s and 40s, or 20s, 30s, and 40s, a lot of us have come to believe that, you know, we can't be adults and we can't achieve things. Pete Hegseth is 44 years old. For reference, I believe that JFK was 43 years old when he became president. Most of the founding fathers were in their 20s, 30s, and 40s when they fought in the Revolutionary War, signed the Declaration of Independence, and wrote the Constitution. So I think that we've kind of lost sight of the fact that young men and women are more than capable, especially if they're mature, have a good moral compass, and are educated in civics and in common sense more than anything else, not necessarily academia, because we've seen where colleges have gone off the deep end and really have started to believe in things that aren't science for a long time. I think that that has kind of clouded our judgment. So I think we're going to, I think we can't judge people on their age. I think that we've also needed a revitalization of the political parties. Both of the political parties have too many people that have been there for way too long. And I think that it says a lot about Trump that this time around he's willing to choose a lot of people who are much younger than him. I think it says that even if he didn't necessarily think of it himself, he has enough people around him that are telling him, look, you have to keep an eye on the prize going forward, because this movement was entirely built on your cult of personality. Now it has to be built on something more. It can't just be, everybody thinks that Trump is cool, he's fun, he's a troll and a meme lord, and he talks a lot of garbage, and we think he's funny, and he sticks it to the libs. That's not a movement, that's a fad. And I think this time what we're seeing right now is the attempt at creating a movement going forward. And that's why there's so much young blood that has been infused to this, whether it's from J.D. Vance to Vivek to now seeing Pete. If you've followed Pete over the years, Pete is a combat veteran of the War on Terror, served in Iraq and Afghanistan, earned 2 Bronze Stars, also worked in the Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba. He's gotten degrees from, I believe, Princeton and Harvard. So he's educated if you care about those, going to Ivy Leagues. He's been a Fox News host. He's been a huge advocate for veterans' rights. During the first Trump administration, he was actually one of the finalists to head up the VA. At the time, if you ask Pete, he would have told you that he was only 36 years old at the time. So he feels that, he feels that, he was too young for that. So, I will go one more thing. Yeah, I know I need a helmet and gloves with the jacket. So he's been an advocate for veterans. He knows what's going on. He's always been for the warfighter. He's got a book that was written right now, The War on the Warfighters. He's pushed back against the DEI and woke policies within the military, which have completely gutted and destroyed the capabilities of the U.S. military right now, taking it from a warfighting force to a political advocacy force. And he's also pushed back against the previous policies of past Republican administrations of trying to nation build and taking the eye off of legitimate global threats, like China, and really deteriorating what has become of the military, where we have these generals who are more like bureaucrats and politicians or members of boards of the military industrial complex. So he really articulates this well in his interview. You can see his maturity, his leadership. He's focused directly on certain generals that he knew would be problems. He's spoken to a lot of different military personnel. He's worked at large through nonprofits that he created over the years about the problems in the VA and the problems that are hurting our military right now. So I think that he's actually really kind of a dark horse choice. And he's really done a fantastic job right now. So I think that is that's really why he's an excellent choice for this. And it's really all there is to it. Rafterman, if the inflation rate was really what you believe it is, then so many people wouldn't be suffering economically right now. If you've seen how the rent has gone up, especially in certain states where rent has nearly doubled in the last few years, where the price of goods has nearly doubled in the last few years, we all know that that is absolute BS. So I'm not even going to argue that point, because we know it's complete and total BS. That is one that you won't get away with here. So we know that that's completely untrue. We know that people are suffering. We know that wages have stagnated. We know that prices are higher than ever, especially when it comes to housing. You can also look at the automobile market right now and how prices have been inflated there, and how we've completely suffered and screwed the pooch on that. Gas prices have been extremely high. So this is all associated with a lot of policies that have been pushed by this and in the post-COVID era as well. We've offshored a lot of jobs. We've pushed a lot of bad policies, and that's really all there is to it. And this does go with several different things. Look, corporate welfare is also a serious problem. That's something that was pushed by the Republicans, because we also work in a system that is based on a lot of cronyism, where companies, smaller businesses, can't actually compete because there are barriers to entry through a lot of the regulations that major corporations have lobbied for with Congress. So this is something that both Democrats and Republicans are to blame. And most people would be too afraid to say that because, oh yeah, Republicans are the party of corporations. So this is a problem with all of that. And that's why you do have to eliminate a lot of this. And this is also with offshoring things and not holding businesses to a higher standard. So the American people do have to take some responsibility here too. And you have to demand that when cars are being made overseas and corporations decide to increase the price of a vehicle $10,000, even though the labor cost in manufacturing that vehicle has dropped by, an eighth, it is up to consumers to eliminate some of that. Now, part of this is also the education system, where we are no longer taught personal responsibility and how to control our own finances. So yes, people do need to take responsibility of themselves. You can't be spending money on credit cards for things that you can't afford. You shouldn't finance things all the time, and you should be willing to keep products for longer than you want to. But this is up for us as consumers to demand these things, and to also push back against corporate welfare from both sides of the aisle, because there's no reason why major corporations should be getting subsidies or have anti-competitive regulations that destroy small businesses and that prevent competition from being able to penetrate certain markets. And this is something that's caused in every industry, from big tech to the pharmaceutical industry and everything, above and beyond. It's also caused by stupid regulations, things like the Jones Act. This is why Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and even Alaska, to a certain extent, suffer from even higher prices than the mainland U.S., because products and goods need to be shipped, from to the mainland first, and then out to those U.S. states and territories, or commonwealths in the case of Puerto Rico. So it's all of these things. And most conservatives probably wouldn't even be willing to have that discussion, but it's a fact. And this is why the coalition that has been brought together by Trump does make a difference. Now, are tariffs necessarily the best way to do it? I don't know. Now, I can tell you that it does seem to be a coincidence that when the tariffs started really making an impact, certain things happened around the world where China had something that happened that affected the rest of the world right when it seemed like these things were being painful. And look, there needs to be a sense of propriety here by American companies as well, because we as Americans should have a problem with buying products that are built with slave wages in a foreign country, because not only are Americans losing jobs, but we're sending them over and empowering the CCP and our other adversaries because we want cheap iPhones and things like that. That's not acceptable on a moral basis from us either. So we should want higher quality products that are built domestically, or at least built in this hemisphere, bring back jobs and companies from a lot of those countries, and allow more competition. Now, if even the threat of tariffs forces companies to bring jobs back to the United States, that's a good thing. And yes, the U.S. budget is $2 trillion. It should be a lot less. The U.S. government is bloated. It is doing too much. It is inefficient. And at least half of it needs to be utterly eliminated. And yes, that does mean the military budget as well, which again, you're not going to hear that from most conservatives, but it is true. There is no reason why the United States of America needs to be all over the world defending every other country, especially when we have countries in Europe that have socialized health care, give benefits to not only their citizenry, but their illegals, but they can't even pay 2% for NATO because they know that the United States is going to go there and do it. Now, part of this is also because of the intelligence industrial complex and the fact that the State Department and the U.S. intelligence services have been blackmailing both our allies and our enemies for years and making we, the American people, look bad through their imperialistic policies. So, yes, all of the above has to go away, and all of this is created because we actually have a fascistic system here, because we have an incestuous relationship between our government and global corporations that are sucking dry the American people, using our money to perpetuate wars throughout the world and to try to bring back authoritarianism here, because we're starting to realize it and they don't like what they're seeing, and they don't like the fact that we're waking up to exactly what happened to the Roman Republic before it collapsed and became an authoritarian Roman Empire thousands of years ago. And that's the path that we're going down. So we're waking up to this. And this is why Trump has a broad-based coalition of different people from different parties, because we've realized that we're not really fighting against the left in this country necessarily. We are fighting against an authoritarian system of government that is perpetuated by both parties and that is pushed by a good old boys club in Washington, D.C., where both parties do backdoor deals in smoke rooms with major corporations and lobbyists and foreign governments to try to suck our resources up and use our military as a cudgel to get what they want. And that's really what is going on right here. So that's where we're at. And sometimes you take the people that you can get. There's no perfect candidate. There really isn't. Trump is the one that we've got. And of all the ones that we've seen, he's the only one pushing ideas. And again, I think that losing in 2020 humbled him and made him open to better ideas. So we've been doing one thing for the last 60 years. It has gotten us into this position. We're going to try something different, and we're going to see where it goes. And that's really all that we can do at this point, because it will be impossible to go back to the way that the America of the founders was. It's going to take some sort of hybridization of all of that. So that's where we're going to be. And I think ultimately that's going to be where the government moves towards. And I'm willing to see where it's going to go. I really am. The country's been moving in the wrong direction for the past 20 years or so. Well, it's really been moving in the wrong direction, if we're being honest, since the end of World War II. And you started seeing the military-industrial complex and the intelligence state take advantage of the fact that Europe was decimated and most of our enemies were decimated. And they used, the threat of communism is an excuse to try to perpetuate our system throughout the world, get us off the gold standard, and change a lot of things, in our system, both globally and locally. And so we've been paying the price for that. So to dismantle a Leviathan like that, a regulatory state, and almost an imperialistic and very cronyist attitude of corporations and collusion within the government, it's going to take some drastic changes. And sometimes it's going to take people that were part of the system in order to change some of the system. That is it. The Lord works in mysterious ways, and this is where we're at. It could blow up in our faces, and it can end up just as bad as before. It may end up worse because then our enemies will be able to use it against us. But a major course correction was necessary, and that's really where they're going to go. So that's really what we're going to start seeing here. And again, I think with the type of think tank that Trump was able to amass, we're going to see a lot of changes to even some of the policies that he may have had before. So I have to give the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of things are going to change. A lot of people are going to get scared. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs within the government. So there will be repercussions for that. But anytime that you have drastic changes, even if we'd gone to a minarchist, let's say we'd gone full libertarian, I think that would have been a shock to the system, even greater than anything that we would have seen. And you would have probably seen the U.S. economy tank immediately before it started recovering. I don't think that a pure minarchist and libertarian system can really function in today's world anyway. I think that there's too many... There's too much global influence, and we have too many adversaries that could take advantage of that. So you do have to have a national government that at least deals with borders, monetary policy, and obviously military policy and intelligence in some way. You can't get rid of the intelligence agencies entirely. We have to be able to investigate and see what our enemies are doing and prevent attacks from happening. That's just being realistic. But we do have to bring back a sense of honor and propriety into our system and work with what we've got, and at least push America forward into the future through innovation and at least pride in being American and bringing back some of those values. So that's pretty much where I'm at on that. So I'm already at the 2-hour mark, but we had some technical issues in the beginning. So let's discuss what happened at the UAP hearing yesterday. I'm going to bring up some of the paperwork that Michael Schellenberger, great follow on Twitter, by the way, brought up. Now, UFOs aren't something that I've really talked about, but it seems over the last few years, we've been seeing a huge uptick. I think that we've always been fascinated, right? Ever since, War of the Worlds was written in the late 1800s, we've had Jules Verne's novels, we've just seen a fascination with science fiction really ramp up in the last, almost 200 years. But really after the Roswell, New Mexico incident and other incidences throughout the world, we've really become more and more fascinated with what were previously called UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and what are now referred to by the government as UAPs, or unidentified anomalous phenomenon, because it's not just flying objects. You've got multi-domain vehicles or entities or whatever you want to call them now. And I use the word entity because a lot of the descriptions of what it seems like people within the government are seeing don't seem to be entirely physical craft. They're seeing things that seem to be able to function in outside of the atmosphere, within the atmosphere, and under the ocean. Things that seem to be able to phase through solid materials, almost phase shift, things that are able to disappear or become invisible, and vehicles or things that seem to be able to accelerate at thousands of Gs, when even our most high-performance military aircraft, whether manned or unmanned, can have performance of maybe a couple of dozen G-forces. So a G is the force of gravity against your body. So obviously multiple G's would be 2 times. 2 G's is 2 times your body weight, 3 G's, etc. So we've seen devices that can accelerate at thousands of times of Earth's gravity. So that would destroy or disintegrate almost any material, definitely organic material that we've ever seen. They had four members go before the House yesterday. Luis Elizondo, who I believe in 2017 started disclosing some information. He used to be a member of the military intelligence community, worked in Afghanistan and in South America, and then started working on other programs and started hearing more and more about UAPs and realized that they were real. That, according to him and many other sources that have credibility within the government, that the U.S. military has recovered craft of certain types, entities, so non-human intelligences. So that could be either, non-human biological entities or maybe even robots, so AI, that kind of thing. He couldn't specify that. He really goes up to the point where he can say things that he can go up to the point where something is classified. So he's tried to maintain a level of disclosure without being thrown in prison. His freedom has been threatened before. They had an admiral there who was the head of the U.S. Navy's meteorological service. One of the former high-end officials at NASA, and Michael Schellenberger, who is a journalist who has a lot of supposed high-level sources within the Department of Defense. So they all went before this House Congressional Committee. It was run by Nancy Mace. She's actually been great when it comes to this. Tim Burchett and Anna Polina are also part of this. It's a bipartisan committee that's been looking into this and trying to discover why the Department of Defense and the executive branch have been hiding a lot of these incidences from Congress and why they've been locked out of it, and trying to get to the bottom of this to get to the point where maybe we reach disclosure. And I know that there's a lot of different theories about why disclosure hasn't happened. Mr. Elizondo has discussed some of these. It is anywhere between embarrassment by the military and intelligence agencies that there are platforms out there that are not built by the United States of America or the U.S. military that are able to outperform anything that we have, that are able to operate over classified military facilities and nuclear facilities with impunity, and that can pretty much do whatever they want. And, go underwater, go into space, avert detection, harass some of our most high performance airframes like the F-22, and have also been seen over foreign military facilities as well. So, which begs the question: are they advanced technologies from other countries? Are some of them perhaps things that DARPA has developed here ourselves, and we're basically punking ourselves? Is it extraterrestrials? Or, as has gained a lot more traction in different communities, is it something of a spiritual or transdimensional element? Are we dealing with angels and demons and things like that? There are a lot of elements that believe that. There's a lot of involvement with the Vatican as well, and there has been for years. That kind of gives a little bit of credence to that. There have been a lot of rumors from people within the government that have kind of stated things like that as well, but we don't really know. And honestly, at this point, because of the ambiguity and the secrecy behind it, it could really be it could be all of the above, it could be none of the above. So let's check out what Schellenberger had to say, and I'll read a couple of the pages of the document here, and I would encourage you all to check it out. He's referring here, and I think the name is interesting because, as I've seen more people kind of go down the spiritual path of UFOs and UAPs, I think the fact that the government decided to call this operation I think I think the fact that they called it Immaculate Constellation is a play on Immaculate Conception, which, is the way that Jesus Christ was born. The Virgin Mary was, anointed by the Holy Spirit, and that's how Jesus was able to be born without a father. Essentially, his father was God. So it's kind of a play on, on Jesus's origin. So I think that that's pretty interesting. Maybe it's just trying to troll people. Maybe there's more to it. It's always interesting why the military tries to choose certain names for certain operations. Sometimes it's totally innocuous. Sometimes it tells you everything. So that's neither here nor there. So let's bring this up. I should have had this up earlier, but there you go. Michael Schellenberger. So, all right. Okay. So here are the documents. Let's check out the report right here. We'll bring it on the big page and we will share the screen here. Boom. So we can zoom into this a little bit more, can't we? Open an image in new tab. Yeah, let's open it a little bit more. All right. So this is a copy. Now, Mr. Schellenberger claims that this was given to him from a source within the Department of Defense. He obviously couldn't name the source because as a journalist of integrity, he doesn't want to expose whoever may have given him this. So you can take this as either here or nor there. This does seem to be legitimate. I'll spend a few minutes talking about this. I don't really want to get past the 2.5 hour mark here, but I do think that this is interesting and worth looking into. So the introduction, this document is the result of a multi-year internal investigation into the subjects of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, technologies of unknown origin, TUO, and non-human intelligences, NHIs. This investigation was undertaken in response to the urgent and credible threats to the public good and safety of the United States of America and provided to Congress through the UAP whistleblower mechanisms established by the Fiscal Year 23 National Defense Authorization Act and the Fiscal Year 23 National Intelligence Authorization Act. The data consulted during this investigation and summarized in this report originated from non-public data held within the executive branch of the United States government, or USG. The author obtained access to this information while pursuing their lawful duties as an employee of the Department of Defense. This public version of the author's report was reviewed and approved for public release by the Department of State Bureau of Global Public Affairs. The results of this investigation are deeply disturbing. Elements of the U.S. executive branch have conspired to prevent the U.S. legislative branch from exercising its lawful powers of governments with respect to the UAP, TUO, and NHI issues. The information provided by the author strongly suggests that the U.S. executive branch has been managing UAP, NHI issues without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. The criminal conspiracy keeps the elected government of the United States and its citizens ignorant of profound discoveries and dire threats originating from the existence of UAP, NHI, and their technologies. Unambiguous evidence demonstrating the reality of UAP, NHI, and TUO has been made available to Congress by multiple independent UAP whistleblowers. This document is but one item of evidence brought to Congress. Much more exists and hopefully will be made available. In this public version of the report, information is organized into 7 categories of evidence, including an unacknowledged special access program, or USAP, imagery, intelligence, IMINT, human intelligence, HUMINT, signals intelligence, SIGINT, U.S. government bureaucratic records, U.S. government historical records, and other sensitive sources. All information in this report is derived from access to non-public information. Section 1, unacknowledged special access program called Immaculate Constellation. Immaculate Constellation is an unacknowledged special access program, or USAP, established following the public disclosure of the AATIP of ATIP and OSAP programs by Luis Elizondo in 2017. Upon disclosure to Congress, it was determined that this USAP and its collateral information have not been lawfully reported to Congress. Immaculate Constellation's primary mission is collecting imagery intelligence on UAPs and AR or RV, reproduction vehicles. I believe the ARV is artificial reproduction vehicles, I think, but they didn't define that. Utilizing tasked and untasked U.S. military intelligence resources as part of a network of special access programs linked to non-human intelligence and UAP technologies. Immaculate Constellation acts as a nexus for collecting, analyzing, and disseminating intelligence on the activities, capabilities, and locations of anomalous aerospace threats that originate from foreign or unidentified sources. So, page number 2. It's going to go into more of what Immaculate Constellation is, just explaining the program, what it was monitoring using intelligence resources, human intelligence, signals intelligence, all that good stuff. Really, the relevant part is U.S. government imagery intelligence, so we'll read about that. Okay. Section 2, the U.S. government maintains imminent databases accessible to personnel with appropriate security clearances and mission need. These databases are scattered across various organizations and services, leading to a fragmented ownership infrastructure. The dispersion complicates the timely and comprehensive gathering of imaging intelligence related to UAPs. Control over access to these data sets primarily reside within the military intelligence enterprise and common combatant commands, the armed services, and individual project managers. The image collected from data sets available to the DoD and reviewed for this report provide compelling evidence for UAPs which defy prosaic explanations. And then these are a description of some of the images that have been seen by the individual that was providing this report. So we'll go there. They used anything from infrared, forward-looking infrared, full-motion video, thermal, and still photography at different wavelengths with different sensors. Some of those sensors were in space, so satellite imagery, gun camera footage, cameras on military bases, or helicopters, things like that. So these are some of the incidents that have occurred where some of these things have been seen and a description of some of these events. Central Command cuboid formation of metallic orbs on U.S. government networks. There exists, and that's going to be the intro for each one. So for each one, I'm going to skip kind of that beginning part. There exists daytime full motion video and daytime forward-looking infrared footage of a formation of 12 metallic orbs skinning the ocean surface at high speed before dispersing in multiple directions. The rapid and agile maneuvering of the metallic orbs were incompatible with known aerospace vehicles and were between 3 to 6 meters, or about 10 feet to 19 or 20 feet in diameter. In the opening segment of this footage, the 12 metallic orbs flew in a tight cuboid formation. The metallic orbs were in 3 vertical square formations of 4 orbs each, arranged in a three-pronged configuration, creating the illusion of a cube at distance. All the orbs were white hot against the black cold ocean in the FLIR footage, so it was negative, infrared footage. So a lot of times you usually see, it was regular what you'd see where, hot sources show up as white, and anything cold would show up as black if you're looking at it, the video. And each sphere created a faint atmospheric distortion around itself and as a heat shimmer or contrail. The metallic orbs moved in this cube formation over the ocean for some time before rapidly breaking formation as pairs. The sensor platform lost track of most of the metallic orbs as they ascended in altitude and accelerated in speed, but maintained observation on a pair of metallic orbs, continuing the original trajectory of the formation. Interesting. So, and a pair of metallic orbs continued on the original trajectory, and they were able to be observed for a little bit longer. Central Command. Fast mover observed transiting over sensitive facilities on... there exists FLIR footage of a small to medium oval UAP flying at high speed and low to the surface. The footage begins as a routine surveillance of a sensitive coastal facility when the oval UAP rapidly comes into frame as it flies above coastal facilities. The oval UAP then makes a rapid turn towards the ocean where it's tracked by the collection platform. The oval UAP is tracked flying low over the open ocean at high speed before the track is lost. All right, not that crazy. Indo-PACOM, so Indo-Pacific intelligence vessels positioned to collect on reproduction vehicle. There exists infrared footage of and imagery of a group of vessels engaged in signals intelligence and mass intelligence gathering at night in a specific area of the Pacific Ocean. In this footage, which was in close proximity to the vessels, a large equilateral triangle UAP suddenly appears directly over the ships. 3 bright points are seen at each bottom corner of the UAP, which is observed to slowly rotate on its horizontal axis. This rotation partially reveals a horizontal bar of sweeping lights. Intelligence analysis associated with this event specifies that the equilateral triangle is a reproduction vehicle. Again, I'm not really sure what that means, and concludes that the vessel must have been aware of the reproduction vehicle's frequent use of those coordinates due to foreign prepositioning of advanced collection assets at the exact time and place. After a brief period of hovering and slowly rotating approximately 500 to 1,000 meters above the ocean, the reproductive vehicle suddenly disappears and the footage ends. Indo-Pacific Command, equilateral triangle UAP tails unwitting vessel. There exists infrared footage of an equilateral triangle UAP approximately fighter jet size hovering less than 200 meters above a vessel in the night at a location in the Pacific Ocean. Intelligence analysis, boom, associated with this event. Let's open it larger. Boom, boom. It specifies that the equilateral triangle is an ARV or RV of unknown origin. The vessel gives no signs that it is aware of the ARV-RV, maintaining altitude and bearing directly overhead. 2 lights on the underside of the ARV-RV are visible, while a third is blocked from view due to a slightly upward angle of orientation. Indo-Pacific Command, large disk using clouds as concealment. There exists OPIR footage. That's something infrared. I'm not sure what that is. You guys will have to look that up. Of a large saucer-shaped UAP emerging within a dense cloud formation. The saucer registered black hot against white cold, so this time the infrared was inverted, with atmospheric disturbances caused by the saucer-shaped UAP visible. The saucer was between 200 and 400 meters in circumference, so about 650 feet to almost like 1,300 feet in diameter in circumference. So that's a fairly big object. We're talking something the size of a vessel, of a large naval vessel, and displayed symmetrical concavities on its upper surface. So, you know, almost like a lens shape. So your typical flying saucer kind of shape. The saucer-shaped UAP emerges at a shallow angle, traveling upwards towards the outer atmosphere after breaking above the cloud cover. The saucer-shaped UAP suddenly reverses its direction, descending partially back into the cloud cover, then accelerating rapidly out of frame and partially obscured by the cloud tops. This behavior was evasive in nature and implied that the saucer-shaped UAP became aware that it was under observation by a space-based collection platform. Oh, yeah, there you go. So this one was seen by satellites. Indo-Pacific Command, boomerang UAP observed by a pilot and sensor suite. There exists FLIR footage of a swept boomerang UAP maneuvering at an uncertain altitude at a location off the east coast of a country. I wonder which country it is. Maybe China. The UAP is tracked against clouds by sensor suite of the operating craft. The UAP is observed rapidly decelerating to a stationary hover, followed by a sudden emission of a sphere of light from the junction of the 2 wings, which expands to partially engulf the craft in a rotating sphere of light, at which point the available footage ends. Northcom, so Northern Command. Jellyfish UAP crosses the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, this one is fascinating. Very fascinating. There exists FLIR footage of an irregularly shaped UAP flying across the southern border. The UAP appeared in FLIR to be modeled irregularly with hot and cold emissions and approximated a jellyfish or floating brain with hanging appendages in appearance. The UAP flew against the wind with no visible means of propulsion, maintained an unnatural rigidity in its movements and flight path, and maintained a comparatively low altitude to geographic features. In appearance and behavior, the footage of this UAP violating the airspace of the southern border resembled the same class of UAPs observed near Department of Defense facilities in Iraq and Afghanistan. There exists at least one compilation video of this class of UAP sourced from DoD Force Protection Assets and Theater ISR, which uses footage as a point of comparison. That's a weird one. I've never heard of anything like that. Northern Command supersonic range Fowler intercepts USN fighter or U.S. Navy fighter. There exists clear footage and radar data of a supersonic UAP of uncertain characteristics conducting a head-on intercept of a U.S. Navy fighter operating off of the eastern seaboard. The UAP is observed emerging from a cloud bank at high speed and approaching the U.S. Navy aircraft head-on, rapidly passing over the left side of the cockpit. Radar data from this approach tracks the UAP on its approach towards the craft, providing information on speed, heading, and elevation. Southern Command, tic-tac detected by space asset in proximity of a vessel. There exists OPIR, so I'm guessing OPIR is satellite imagery. And massent of a tic-tac UAP transiting through an area of the Atlantic Ocean. The tic-tac appears at an altitude at or near local cloud cover, and correlated electromagnetic signatures were collected by massent. In the available footage, the tic-tac UAP rapidly transits through the field of regard as it transits the ocean. No observed reaction is... Let's go to the next set of documents here. Seen to come from the vessel, but its proximity in time and space to the trajectory of this UAP suggests some sort of foreknowledge of the UAP event by intelligence. Section 3, Defense Human Intelligence Reporting. So this is eyewitness reports. So we'll go through a couple more of these, and then I will link you guys with Schellenberger. And if you're interested in learning more, you can check this out for yourself. Actually, I'll just go through some of this real quick. So this is eyewitness accounts from 1991 to 2022. We described kind of the categorization of the different UAPs that we've seen here, which are spheres or orbs. These are the most common. They think that this is kind of a standard design, so to speak. Discs or saucers, often described as the types of saucers that we've seen stereotypically in science fiction. Some of them are just pure, saucers. Some of them have a little dome on top, which is almost like the Mars Attacks stereotypical type of flying saucer, which almost seems like it's got like a cockpit type of formation on top, even though it's all solid. Sometimes they're metallic. Sometimes they're just more silvery. The oval or tic-tac. The tic-tac is what we saw in that footage from the U.S. Navy's F-18 footage that was released a few years ago. So, like a pill-shaped type of UAP, but it can maneuver pretty much in every way. Sometimes they're a little bit egg-shaped as well. The triangles, so the giant equilateral triangles, and which I'm more inclined to believe that those might be really advanced technology from either ourselves or ourselves being the United States or maybe other countries, because those seem to be a little bit more conventional. But the fact that they can accelerate and hover in ways that none of our aircraft can, that's kind of unusual. A lot of them are described to have some sort of humming, especially when they're hovering. They're described to cause kind of mental disturbances, people losing time, a sense of time, feeling a huge amount of unease. Luis Elizondo has explained that there have been several instances where people have died as a result of interaction with some of these craft and devices. I don't know what that means, because he hasn't been able to elaborate that. Is it some sort of anti-gravity drive or inertial dampening system, which maybe if you're too close to it, it's going to, if there's artificial gravity that is being used as propulsion, is it pushing against the ground? Is it giving off some field that can kill things? They seem to be able to scramble electronics. Is that a defensive measure, or is that just a result of the energy that they give off, that there's a field around them that if you get too close to it, it's just going to scramble electronics and maybe, cause some sort of mental disturbance? I don't know. A lot of these incidences seem to describe people losing time or not knowing how much time has passed, and maybe much more or less time has passed than they seem to think. There's a pretty crazy, the irregular organic shaped ones, the jellyfish shape, they've also described them as like floating brains, which I think is a very bizarre description for something. So that he's got tables here that go through the different categories of UAPs and kind of their characteristics. So if you want to get down to the nitty gritty here, this is pretty cool stuff. At least I think so. And he also goes through some of the incidences here that happened with eyewitness accounts. I'll read a couple of these that I think are the two most profound ones, and then we'll call it a night here. So this one's crazy because this occurred over an aircraft carrier. So this is from Human Intelligence, so eyewitness reports. And this is fascinating to me because if this occurred in such close proximity to an aircraft carrier, you would think that there would have been cameras on the flight deck that would have picked this up as well. So it's bizarre. So I know I've heard of instances where sometimes these UAPs are picked up by infrared sensors, but they can't be seen by the naked eye. This almost seems to be the opposite, where this was visually observed but not picked up on any sensors. So maybe that's a possibility as well. That's why I've said entity is a possibility here, rather than, a physical, some sort of drone or craft. But there's really just no way to know, right? Close encounter by an aircraft by CVN is nuclear powered aircraft carrier. Flight deck personnel while on active duty in the Pacific. Flight deck personnel working night duty experienced a close encounter with a spherical UAP of medium to large size. On deck, flight crew observed a small orange-red sphere maneuvering at high altitude above the carrier. Shortly after first observation, the UAP rapidly descended from high altitude to a position directly above the flight deck of the aircraft carrier, approximately 100 to 200 yards. So, 300 to 600 feet above the carrier. So an aircraft carrier is about 1,100 feet long. So you're talking about not even higher than the length of the carrier itself, and really probably only reaching to near the top of the tower on top of the carrier. So you would think that the bridge personnel may have observed this as well. So I'd like to know more about this. This is a pretty fascinating incident. The UAP maintained altitude match speed with the underway carrier for an uncertain period. Observing personnel reported altered perceptions of time during the close encounter. The UAPs appeared to emit a soft orange-red light, which bizarrely did not illuminate the ocean or the flight deck of the aircraft carrier. So it's almost like when you've got a glitch or bad lighting in a video game where something lights up, but it doesn't change the actual color in the game. So it's almost like a rendering glitch, or they just don't have ray tracing or something like that. So if you want kind of a physical description of how that might look. Bizarrely, soft orange red light, which did not illuminate the ocean or the flight deck, despite the visual appearance of intense luminosity. The surface of the UAP was observed to be dynamic, rolling like the surface of the sun, so like a tiny star. The UAP took no reported actions during the encounter, only maintaining a close-in proximity to the carrier. After an uncertain period of time, the UAP suddenly shot into the air, disappearing at a point high above the carrier. Observing personnel felt as if they'd been snapped out of a trance and a sense of profound unease. The incident report concludes with noting that the carrier had not responded in any way to what was perceived as a hostile interception by the UAP. That's pretty interesting stuff. And then this will be the last one that I go over with all of you tonight. Metallic orbs intercept an F-22 on continental U.S. air surveillance and control mission. While performing a routine airspace surveillance and control mission in the Eastern Air Defense Sector, an F-22 pilot observed multiple UAP contacts at mission altitude. Moving to intercept, the F-22 pilot noted multiple metallic orbs, slightly larger than a sedan, hovering in place. Upon vectoring towards the UAPs, a smaller formation of the metallic orbs accelerated at rapid speed towards the F-22, which was unable to establish radar locks on the presumed hostile UAPs. The F-22 broke trajectory and attempted to evade, but was intercepted and boxed in by approximately 3 to 6 UAPs. One UAP maneuvered in proximity about less than 40 feet away to the area directly starboard of the cockpit, where the UAP established a rigid spatial relationship with the F-22, maintaining its exact position and orientation parallel to the F-22's cockpit, despite multiple evasive rolls and maneuvers. So if you kind of want to understand what that means in layman's terms is, let's say that this is the F-22 right here, and this is our UAP. So even as the F-22 started trying to, do barrel rolls and things like this, the UAP basically stayed directly on its axis and did not move like away from it. So it pretty much, you could almost imagine that if it was attached to the F-22 with like a stick or something like that, an outboard, an outrigger, that it would just stay there, and it just stayed around that orbit with the F-22, which honestly, for something to do that against the most maneuverable fighter that we know of, obviously in the U.S. Air Force inventory, is something with pretty phenomenal performance characteristics and a high level of precision flying there that may not be possible by a human pilot, maybe some sort of drone or something like that, or again, a non-human intelligence. Surrounded by the presumed hostile UAPs, the F-22 was forced out of the mission area under the escort of the UAP formation. So they scared our F-22 out of the area and followed it until it was out of their area of operation. So very interesting stuff here. Again, this is from Michael Schellenberger. I will post his X account here. You guys can check it out. See for yourselves if you believe some of this stuff. This does line up with a lot of the sources that were provided by Luis Elizondo in the past. And he seems credible. A lot of this stuff is coming out. Again, why would we not want to disclose some of this information? A lot of it is embarrassment by the U.S. government. It could be that we're dealing with things that are evil, and maybe the government doesn't want people to know about it. There could be a religious element involved. If you were dealing with dark forces and things like that, you may not want people to know that the government is working with evil entities or beings. Maybe they're giving up human beings and allowing them to abduct humans and experiment on them. I don't know. If it's a foreign adversary, obviously we'd be pretty disappointed to know that another country has superior technology to us. If it's some of our technology, we obviously don't want to reveal it to our enemies. So those are all the theories that can be put out there. Take your pick, ladies and gentlemen. It could be any one of them. So that's pretty much where we're at. And that is the show that I have for you today. Giving you something a little bit different, but still relevant. There were a lot of things going on yesterday. Simultaneously, we obviously had the Senate majority leader and leadership positions being chosen. Spoke a little bit about that at the beginning of the show. We had more of Trump's cabinet picks appear throughout the day. We had Trump meeting with the Bidens at the White House, which it seemed like the happiest that Joe Biden has been since he became president, which I thought was pretty funny and interesting. And we had this UAP/UFO hearing going on Capitol Hill at the same time. Follow Schellenberger. Check out some interviews with Luis Elizondo on YouTube. He goes into some of this stuff as well. Take it or leave it, whether you believe in it or not. I do believe in it. I've got a lot of theories about that. I've thrown some of those theories out there for you. There are a lot of people that are starting to think about the spiritual element in these things, but that's a rabbit hole that it's not appropriate in this show to talk about. You can probably check out some of Gary's Nerdrotics podcast on some of that stuff. There's a lot of great shows dealing with the spiritual elements of possible extraterrestrials. You can watch other good shows like, Skinwalker Ranch is pretty good too on the History Channel. take reality TV for what it's worth. It definitely seems like we're getting closer and closer to the point of disclosure, but we do have to question the motivations both for and against disclosure, and how in an era where we're going towards AI and deep fakes and things like that, how the truth may not be disclosed and fake evidence may make its way out there as well, and be used deceptively. So just be careful. Always remain skeptical of everything. Question with boldness, even the existence of God, as they say. And this has been Rolo's Rants number 24. I will catch you here next Thursday at 6 o'clock. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 o'clock with Commander N and the old man for some Fortnite Friday. So thank you, everyone. God bless you. God bless America. And Den Hawken, thank you for the $5 super chat again. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a great evening.